Hey, what's going on? Okay, so today we're going to be going through the Codewars JavaScript challenge called Removing Elements. I'm gonna drop the link into the description. So if you want to train this kid out along with me, you can go ahead and do that. So let's read what they actually want. So this function, remove every other, is a function that takes an array and it removes every second element from the array. Okay, always keep the first element and start removing from the next element. So pretty much every second element we want to remove. Okay, now how do we do that? They also tell you that none of the arrays will be empty, so you don't have to worry about that. So let's just analyze a little bit. These are going to be their tests. Remove every other. Let's see how they're executing this function. So we see that they execute it with string types, with number types, with arrays, right? They have different arrays of numbers, arrays of string. So pretty much the type of element shouldn't matter to us. The only thing that we want to make sure is that we're processing based on index. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, let's think about it. First of all, let's just take our function over to JSFiddle. I like to go to jsfiddle.net to actually do these katas. Why? Because I have a text editor and I also have a console directly in my browser, and it's nice and easy to quickly write code and test it. Now, before I do anything, let's just write out a test. We're just one simple test. Let's make an array, and let's say 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, this way, when we actually execute our code, meaning remove every other, we can just pass an array, and that should return to us only ones, right? Because every other one is going to be the same. Now, let's actually write some pseudocode. First, let's think about it. If we want to remove only every other one, well, what's the common denominator here is that we know that we want to remove. How can we do that? We can do that based on indexes that are not odd. Sorry, not even. Right? So any odd indices we want to remove. Right? So the first one, the third one, right? First one, third one, fifth one. That's going to give us pretty much every other one. Okay? How do you write something like that? How do you write based on how do you return an array from a big array that only has evens, right? Even indices. Well, I already know the answer, but I'm not gonna tell you. I'm gonna pretend like I have no idea, so that you can actually understand how to do research and come up with a correct method. So let's go over here. Let's go to Google and let's say google.com. Let's say how to return subset from array. Let's do a little bit of subset of array, right? But we want based on a condition, right? The condition is that the index has to be the array has to be all the indexes that are evens, right? So how to return subset from array based on condition, okay? And we get the Stack Overflow. Let's go into Stack Overflow because a lot of people are very smart on Stack Overflow and they know the answer immediately. And usually I like to scroll down to the very first check mark, and the answer is like this. They say you can use array.filter method. Okay, let's actually look up the array.filter method. Let's go back to Google and let's say array filter method. Great, we have our developer.mozilla, and let's actually analyze the method. So here we have a constant words, and it has a bunch of words. It's an array of words, and we want to make a new array result based on words and filter every single, right? So filter is kind of like an iteration loop. It's going to iterate through through words, and it's going to test a condition on every single element, okay? So the test here is that if the word length is greater than 6, then we want to add that element into the new array of result, okay? And when we actually run this, it's going to give us, right, console log result. We're going to run that, and that's going to give us only the long words that are longer than 6. Great, okay, cool. So we understand how filter works. But let's actually look a little deeper, because we know that we don't want the actual element, because we're not dealing with actual elements. We want to deal with their indices, right? The index of 0, index of 1, index of 2, and only return index 0, index 2, index 4, and so on. Only those that are evens, okay? So, okay, great. So we have over here filter. We can use it with just element, pass into the parameter, or we can even pass in a second argument, which is index. Okay, great. That's exactly what we need, right? So over here, we can write our condition and say if index is divisible, right? If it's positive, sorry, not positive. If it's even, then we want to return that element, okay? Let's actually write that. Let's actually write that code. Again, we like to always start with writing some pseudocode first, so let's write some pseudocode. Return. First of all, I always like to start with the information that's given. So function takes an array of any types. Okay, it could be string, could be strings, numbers, arrays, objects, etc. Okay, so that part doesn't matter. So what do we want to do? We want to return only elements that have index that is even. Okay, so that means 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, dot, dot, dot. Okay? Okay, well, how do we do that practically? So first, let's initialize a new array where we're going to hold, where we will add elements, where we will, sorry, not add elements, where we'll hold the new array based on filtering, okay? Then we want to filter air, which is the argument, so the array that we're putting into the function. Then we want to filter air and assign results to new air, okay? So far, so good. After all that, we want to return our new air. New air is the new array that's going to hold the new filtered elements. Okay, great. So let's actually write that code. So first things first is that we want to make a new array. New array, my keyboard, is equal to, okay, just an array. Then we want to filter new air equals air dot filter, right? We're filtering this array. Okay, air dot filter. What do we want? We want the element and we want the index. Okay, so let's actually write that function and let's open it up. And here we are, right? So here we want to test if the index is even, then keep. Otherwise, no keep. Okay. How do we do that? So we can do it like this. So if, let's write our conditional, index, and I know exactly how to write this, but again, I want you to think about it. How do you write a test that tests whether an integer or a number is even or odd? So again, let's go to Google and let's say google.com, okay? Google knows everything. Google's great. So let's say JS test if integer is even or odd. Oh, okay, great. There's a JavaScript program to check if a number is odd or even. Isn't that exactly what we want? It is. Okay. Oh, okay. So in this example, you're okay. Even numbers are those numbers that are exactly divisible by 2. Correct? We know that. So the remainder operator, which is the modulo, the little percent sign, gives the remainder when used with a number. For example, we have number 6. So 6 divided by 4 has a remainder of 2. Well, what do we know? We know that if a number is divided by 2, then the remainder should be 0, right? That's how we know something is even. Otherwise, it's odd. Okay? So how do we do that? If number divided by 2, modulo 2, is 0, we know that it's even. So let's actually do that. Let's write it exactly like that. So if index modulo, modulo 2 is 0, so what do we want? We want to return element, right? So otherwise, we don't want to return it. So pretty much if we write just this, it's only going to put into new array. It's only going to put into new array the elements that are even. Okay? Oh, sorry, this has to be let. Okay. So let's now go ahead, and after we did all this, let's return new array. And again, don't forget that in our case, since we're using JS Fiddle, we're going to console.log new array. Okay. And we ran it, and as you see, it gave us 1, 1, 1. That's exactly the result that we want, right? 1, 1, 1. Why? Because it kept the first, it kept index 0, index 2, index 4, and I'm sure if we made this even longer, it'll stay true, right? Let's run that, and it gave us exactly what we want. So we're actually going to put this into Codewars. And don't forget that since I use JS Fiddle, I just need to change console log to return. And let's just go ahead and test it. Great, so that passed the test. Now, after we know that the test works, let's actually go ahead and refactor this a little bit and make our code a little bit more condensed, right? So after we already know that everything works, let's go ahead and delete the pseudocode. Let's get rid of all the pseudocode. And let's start refactoring. First, let's just make sure everything still works. Great, everything still works. And let's start refactoring. So what do we know? We know that, first of all, instead of making this new array and assigning the new array to the filter, we can just we can get rid of that, and we can just console log directly the filter. Why? Because console.log. Why? Because filter actually returns from it a new array. It's one of those methods that returns the new item, the new array. Okay, so let's test that, and it still works. Okay, we can actually refactor this even more. How do we do that? So we know one thing right here is that if something is true, then we want to return another thing. We can write that even shorter like this. So if index, so we write the condition, then we have two and signs, and we want element. Okay? This actually is the same thing as this. Okay? Let's get rid of that. Let's make sure everything still works. And it did not work. Oh, because we actually need to put a return before that. And let's test that, and everything still works. Okay, let's keep refactoring. We know another thing is that if we only have one line of code here, then we don't need to put return, and we don't need curly braces. We can do something called an implicit return. Okay, so we got rid of the curly braces, and we got rid of the return keyword, and let's test it, and everything still works. And I think that's as much as we can possibly filter it down. Sorry, refactor it to one line of code. And we already know that in Codewars they want not console log but return. And that's going to be our refactored code. So it's nice and sleek and simple. So one line of code. Let's copy that. Okay, let's copy that into Codewars. So you see how we have all this code. Let's go ahead and paste just one line of code, attempt, and everything works nicely. Awesome.